Good day everyone, I am Evelyn Espanta and today I will be discussing the technical specifications in chapter 16. First, we have the breadth of knowledge necessary. Engineering specification may cover almost any of the phase industrial activity, and it is obvious that no individual can, from his experience and immediate knowledge, be prepared to write suitable specifications for all of the multitude of engineering and architectural works, machines, materials, and processes for which such specifications are sometimes needed. So, even when the specification are for the matters within the experience and the knowledge of individual, and even though that individual has the similar papers, still it needs to have something beyond his experience, and also there are a lot of modifications that needs to be considered. So from what it says earlier, that it is obvious that no one can actually write a suitable specification in a short period of time, or when we say on point on that specific time, but it needs enough time frame to modify, since there will be a lot of considerations that needs to modify and needs to consider, like there are new requirements and new conditions to consider, that may involve a lot of detailed methods not fully familiar or possibly even quite unfamiliar to that engineer which is in charge or has the task. So the next one is the detailed information needed. So in preparation of technical specifications, it is very important that an engineer should possess a comprehensive and a detailed knowledge of. There are five requirements that needs to be considered. So we have the qualities and characteristics of the various materials to be used, and the practicable limits which the qualities necessary for the work in question should be restricted. The second one is the usual and the practicable methods of performing the work to be done in such a manner that it will be completed without unnecessary expense and in a manner satisfactory for the purpose which it is to fulfill. So these two requirements that I mentioned earlier has really had a broad and complete knowledge on the materials and the process that needs to be considered. So this knowledge is required only by extended study. When we say extended study, here comes the observation and experience, and is not usually possessed by a young engineer or by an engineer who has been called upon to undertake work in lines somewhat different from his previous practice. So based from what I've said, is that the capability or the things that an engineer or an engineer possess is unique. So this implies that experience is absolutely necessary in such obtaining a correct specification. So the third one, we have the ability to designate in detail the composition or elements of the material or processes and the methods to be used for their proper production and utilization, or the ability to design in detail the structure, machine, or plant contemplated. Next, we have the fourth one is the knowledge of methods ordinarily employed by the mechanics or operatives in manufacture of the product of machine and in the construction and operation in maintenance of the plant or structure. Fifth one is the experience, which will foresee the necessary materials and methods to be employed, difficulties to be overcome, and contingencies to be met in the work. So those were the requirements of the engineer to have knowledge of. So it really implies that the more the subject is complete, or the subject of knowledge is complete, the more the specification will be better. And also, provided also that the engineer was able to express his ideas in a clear and exact language. Next is the outline. So the detailed requirements of the specifications for even a single fundamental material or process are seldom simple, that they can be clearly kept in mind for the purpose of specification writing without danger of serious omission. So this means that the process are seldom simple, that which could obtain not having the possibility of being neglected. Next is the use of published specifications. In the preparation of technical specifications on lines that differ somewhat from those embraced in the experience of their engineer, the usual method has been to select as a basis for the new specifications similar specification which have been used on other more or less similar work and which are judged by the engineer to be satisfactory. So it is really indeed with the consideration of the engineer. In most cases, the originality of a specification comes also a result of how poor is it. So it really change on how it really differ if the more the specification is original, the poorer it results or it seems like. When selecting for use of specification given by or prepared by other people or other person, they should modify or consider some changes on that specification. Make or prepare a good specification will therefore require or the need of more than even the judicious copying of other specifications. Next is the simple specifications. So, in the performance of the simpler forms of labor and the purchase of the simpler materials or supplies, and even of simpler and smaller machines which have become standard, the necessary specifications are often of the simplest kind. So also such specifications require no elaborate or special knowledge in their preparation, but such knowledge may be required when bids are received. This means that this only necessitates a clear and a precise statement of existing conditions as well as the general design of the machine or the framework needed to meet in those conditions. Next is the use of standard materials and methods. In ordinary practice, it is desirable to specify only such character of machines, materials, supplies, or methods as may be found on the market and general use. Unusual characteristic modifications of standard machines and the introduction of new methods should be specified only when such unusual requirements are clearly needed to secure the best results and after an investigation has clearly shown that the additional expense involved is commensurate with better results to obtain. So this means that those unusual features, improvements to standards, equipment, and implementation of new methods should be defined only when they are explicitly required to achieve the best results, and only after an investigation has shown or made that the increased cost is proportionate to the improved results. Next is the influential of specifications on materials and methods. So while it is largely true, especially in small works, that the engineer must use these materials, products, and methods which are usual and available and have the endorsement of common usage. It is also true that all such commercial products are slowly but surely modified and shaped by the demands of the best practice. If a machine or material is found more or less unsuited for the purpose for which it is used and that purpose is of importance, its users will soon demand such changes in qualities as will make it more satisfactory. So this means that if a certain material or a machine is found to be more or less incompetent when it comes for its purpose for which it is going to be used or it is used, and that purpose is critical, so that in that way the users will demand or want that its quality must be or should be improved. Responsibility. The more the specifications, the greater the degree of responsibility which the contractor should be required to accept. So in fixing responsibility by means of tests and guarantees, the item of the expense involved must be carefully noted. For especially in smaller contracts, such requirements sometimes involve a considerable extra expense. So this means that the greater of the degree of liability that the contractor possesses or he must recognize, the more general requirements it requires. The contractor should always be held responsible for the class of workmanship and material desired, and his responsibility in these matters should be carefully covered in specification. In short, the contractor is responsible for everything. Next one is the definite requirements. So there is often a temptation to cover ignorance by indefinite criteria when preparing specification for materials, process, machinery, or terms for which the engineer is more or less unfamiliar, and this must be excluded or put away. So, general specification in regard to workmanship must, from their nature, necessarily be somewhat inexact and indefinite. But when such clauses must be used, they should be as carefully defined as possible. When necessary, such as clauses may be embodied in the specification and defined by a specification somewhat as follows. Whenever, on account of the nature of the workmanship of material to be furnished, the specification defining the same are, from the nature of such work or material, inexact or indefinite, and are specified to be first class or satisfactory, or by other terms in which the judgment of the individual may vary, then and in that event, the engineer shall be the sole judge of fulfillment of the same. Such provision should be used with caution, as you do not want to put yourself in the hands of inexperienced or incompetent persons. The last one is the standard specification. The standard specification and its requirements are usually widely known to the manufacturers and contractors, and the cost of the materials as subject to such specifications is readily determined. So this means that standards requirements for some materials and processes systems have been adopted by various scientific societies and organizations from time to time. So when these requirements for us material to be used in construction are available by the adoption of the engineer appears to be desirable unless of the unusual circumstances of the case in hand necessitate adjustment in these specifications.